Hello, and welcome to Rosberry Crafts, my YouTube channel where I share all my crafty adventures. Today, I'm bringing you another interview, and I have two interviewees today. Would you like to introduce yourself? Pam,
Sure.
you want to go
I
first?
am Pam Maher, and I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Greg, would you like
I
to
am Knitting
introduce yourself?
Daddy Greg Cahoon in Greensboro, North Carolina, and that's who I am.
Yeah.
Yes. And we host the Unraveling podcast. Well, I guess it's Unraveling, a knitting podcast, because we changed the
Yes.
name a few years ago, but I still keep calling it the Unraveling
Yes,
podcast.
yes, that's why we're here.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been listening to your podcast. I don't know if it's from the beginning or not, but I probably went back and listened to all of them. So I've been a big fan
It's
for
been
a
a long
long
time. I
time.
think
Yeah.
I think it did, was it 8 years ago, Greg? Do you remember?
I
I
think
mean,
that was, it's so long ago. I was a
yeah. And
different
this is
person back then.
this is kind of version two because I didn't start co-hosting until about 5.5 years ago. So Greg first started it with another guy, Joey, and Joey was not a hardcore knitter. So he stepped aside and I stepped in.
Perfect. Lovely.
Yes,
So we're going to start with, are you wearing anything handmade today?
I am. I'm wearing, this is the Chill Cat. I don't know if this is the
Oh.
Chill Cat cowl by Rumi Hill, and I love this. And I cannot remember the yarn. I think it was art yarn, and it's like a cashmere blend, so it's
Ooh.
super luxurious. And the original pattern called for I think 4 colors, but I only had three and or four, I guess three. And no, there's more than three. It's just I think there's four. But I so the original pattern called for more colors than what I had, but I made it work. So
Awesome. Yeah, it
yes,
looks great. I love the lace details on that. Love a good
thank you.
cowl because you just put it on and you don't have
Well, and
to
I think
mess
if
with
you
it.
want, you can,
Snooted.
do one of these numbers.
Oh,
Snood. I've never
yeah,
worn it
yeah.
like this before, but knowing I have options is always nice.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yes. And
Yeah.
I'm a fan of tassels. The tassels are always fun.
I'm a new fan of tassels. I've never put tassels on a shawl before, and I put it on my latest shawl, and I'm like, this is amazing. Why have not, I need to go back and do this for all my shawls.
Yes, you do. And I'll tell you, I've done tassels enough, and I haven't done a ton, but I've gotten to a good place of or a good method of cutting them so they're evenly. So I line them up on my cutting mat and use a rotary
Mhm.
cutter to cut
Oh, that's a
across the
great
bottom. And
idea.
that, yeah, and that really kind of makes a nice, tidy, uniform tassel.
Awesome. Awesome. What about
Yes.
you, Greg?
I'm wearing socks.
Uh-oh, you're gonna put your foot up.
Oh,
Nice.
I didn't know you could bend like that.
I didn't either.
Good job.
All right, well, I'm gonna have to take the rest of the day off. Thanks.
Yeah,
That's
for
right.
sure.
How did you
Yeah, so
get
I'm
this
wearing socks.
injury? I was on a
That's
knitting podcast.
right. Can I file workman's comp for that? So, no, yeah, I'm wearing my socks. I pretty much only wear hand knit socks now, and I wear socks most every day because that's how I
Yeah,
wear around the house.
yeah. Awesome.
So yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, I am also wearing hand knit socks, but I am not gonna attempt to put my feet up here. I don't even know which
Probably
ones I'm
best.
wearing today. Oh, I'm wearing a Cozy Knitter Advent socks. I had to
Oh,
look.
nice.
Yeah,
That yarn is
so I think
really
that was,
pretty.
yeah, I think it was her 2018 one. I have a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't get last year's, and now I regret it because she did like a
Yeah,
gradient fade. It was really
it was
cool.
really
So
pretty. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and then I am also wearing my Waiting for Rain shawl. So this is a pattern by
Ooh,
Sylvia McFadden,
yeah,
who is
that's a
also
pretty
a
one.
BC. She lives in Vancouver, so near me-ish, same province.
hmm
Yeah, so this crescent shaped shawl stays on really nice. And I got this kit at Knit City one year from Passion Knits, and it is Malabrigo, their singles yarn, and yeah, it just worked out really pretty. So,
That's very lovely. That's a pretty
yeah,
pattern.
yeah, and yeah, so the lace is actually done with short rows, so it's very
Ooh,
cool. So it's like
Yeah,
these
I remember.
pockets. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when
Yeah.
it came out, and it's one of the ones that I'm sure it's in my favorites, but it's one of the thousands that I've never gotten to.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yes,
Yeah, well, and when I bought the kit, I was more of a newbie knitter, and because I'm trying to look now, but I can't see in my Ravelry. But I made it in 2016, so it's probably 2014 when I bought the yarn. So yeah, a while ago. But yeah, so it was one of those like I've never done short rows before, so I don't know that it's hard, right? I just did
that's
it
right.
and
That's the best
just followed the
kind.
pattern, and it turned out great. And I'm sure there's mistakes in the lace, but I don't care.
And
Whatever.
they're probably gallopers if they are. So
Yeah,
nobody
yeah,
can see it
exactly.
unless,
No,
yeah.
exactly. So we'll get a little bit into a bit of a story time. Do you want to tell me how each of you came to knitting and crochet or crafting in general?
Sure. Greg, you want to go first?
Okie dokie. So like crafting in general, like as a kid, I loved like crafty type of stuff, especially cross stitch. My mom did a lot of cross stitch, so I did learned how to cross stitch when I was a kid. I learned how to sew when I was a kid, and I loved that. And then didn't, you know, do much of it as I grew older and everything. And then in 2010, my daughter was born. And so I did math. So 2010, my daughter was born, and she was early, and in the so she was in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit for about 5 weeks before she came home. And during that time, uh, the nurses came around and they were giving the families of the kids in the NICU little preemie hats, and so we got some. I looked at them and I thought, I could probably learn how to do this. And I said, I want to do that. So I wanted to learn how to knit hats for my daughter. So I asked my mom if she would teach me how to knit, and she said, no, you don't have enough time to learn how to knit. And she was right. So then I asked my mother-in-law if she would teach me how to knit, and she said, sure. And so I found a preemie hat pattern on the internet, printed it out, and my mother-in-law was visiting us, shortly after the birth of my daughter. So she was there, and she taught me the basic stuff, how to read the pattern. That night I finished it up, and it is a wonky pattern, wonky knit. The pattern is a great pattern, but I mean, it's the first time I'd ever knit anything. But my daughter could wear it. It fit her for a few days before she grew out of it, which is great because she was growing, and I've been knitting ever since. So there you go.
Awesome. And you've designed a couple patterns as well. How did you get into
Yes.
kind of designing, just not finding what you were looking for, or
Well, so the very first, kind of by accident-ish. So the very first pattern I designed was the Scrappy Sock Yarn Preemie Hat pattern, which at the time, this may have been like in 2012 or so. At the time, uh, scrappy sock yarn patterns were very popular on Ravelry and Instagram and things. I had blankets, mostly mitered square blankets, a hexy puff for the beekeeper's quilt, things like that.
Mhm.
So I was trying to think, well, what else could I do with scrappy sock yarn? And of course, I thought was thinking preemie hats. So I designed that hat pattern as an excuse to use up sock yarn scraps, and I put it out there. And originally, I sold it with all the proceeds going to Family Support Network of Central Carolina, which was a charity, an organization that works with families that are experiencing NICU stays, and they were very helpful for us. When my daughter was younger, and after some time, I just eventually turned it into a free pattern. But after having done that, the designing bug kind of hit, and I like I, the way I approach the knitting is the structure of the knits and how things go together and everything. Kind of, my day job is like in computer programming and software, sorts of things. So I think of things very mathematically, very structurally, architecturally, and so I like putting, stitches together and, do patterns and things like that, and making up designs and having fun with it.
Awesome. All right, Pam, your turn.
All right. Well, I've always been crafty. And when I was little, I did the same thing as Greg. I sewed and I cross stitched. I cross stitched for years. And I my brother had given me this Coates and Clark booklet. It was like printed in the 70s or something. And I'm sure he bought it at a yard sale or used bookstore or something. And he gave that to me when we were kids. And I don't know what for, but it did have
Oh.
knitting in it. And at some point when I think I was about 22, I decided I was going to start knitting. I had been making jewelry and mostly with beads, which is great, but it's not portable and you really have to have kind of a setup for it. And so I went to the local yarn store and I bought a pattern for like a short sleeve top and 2 or 3 balls of yarn and the needles, and they kept telling me that I needed to buy all the yarn I needed, but I was like a poor college student, so I did not buy all the yarn that I needed. And I started and I got pretty far along on the body of it, and then at some point I abandoned it and ripped it out. I still have the yarn. And thanks to Ravelry, I found someone that had more of the same yarn in the same dye lot. And I messaged her and I was like, this is really random, but is there any chance you would sell that yarn? And she was like, oh, you can have it. It's been in my stash forever. And I said, well, I bought mine in whatever year it was, probably like 93 or something. And
It's
Way
okay.
back
You
in the
don't have to date yourself.
1900s.
in the last decade. Oh, I don't care. I'm pretty transparent. But so anyhow, she sent me that. So I still have that yarn. I guess it's my
Amazing.
oldest stash. And
Yeah.
I would like to make a top with it. And I just haven't gotten to it yet. But so then I didn't really knit a ton until, I don't know, maybe 5 years later, I started knitting a lot more. I got really bored with cross stitching because it's just kind of repetitive. And you can, obviously choose more complex patterns, but it just wasn't exciting to me anymore. So I started knitting. And when my daughter was about 2 or 3 is when I really started like knitting, because we had gone on a beach trip and I was making something that was like a cabled sweater, and it had bobbles and cables and seed stitch and all this stuff. And I didn't take it to the beach with us because I was like, it's going to be too much. And I was like, gosh, I really wish I had knitting. And that's when I was kind of like, why don't I have another project that I could be doing? So that's when it really, knitter with a capital K, kicked in. And then I started crocheting. I don't know. It's been longer than I think it has, but crochet was harder for me to grasp. And so I finally took a private class with somebody, and then it clicked. And it's still not as intuitive to me as knitting, but I'm a lot better than I used to be. And I think I probably just don't give myself credit for it. So, but I usually have a couple crochet projects. I usually have a couple knitting projects. I also bought a spinning wheel, and a loom is my most recent thing, but I tend to not spin or weave as much. I find, just because I can't just go plop on the couch with my project for those. I have to go to the equipment.
Yeah,
So,
you can see I have a spinning wheel. This is my antique wheel. Yeah, it's actually a flax wheel, so it doesn't spin wool.
Okay.
It was my grandmother's, and my grandfather built it for her from like a kit.
Oh, that's special.
Yeah, so I just keep it around because it's special. But I've tried to spin on it, but it only has the one bobbin too that's kind of attached to it. So yeah, kind of have to work with it. But yeah. But I don't spin that much either. I also have a drop spindle, but yeah, the knitting is you just pick it up and go, and you already know what you're doing, and yeah,
it's just too easy. I
Exactly.
started spinning with a drop spindle, and with the drop spindle, I learned I liked spinning, but not on a drop spindle. So then that's when I got a wheel. So
yeah. See, and I went the other way. I took a class at our local guild, and they loaned me a wheel for a couple months. And then I ended up buying a wheel, and then I was like, I didn't really think about my purchase very well. I was just like, somebody's selling a wheel, I'm going to buy it. Not this one, but a different one. And I didn't enjoy it. So then I went to drop spindle.
Oh, that's funny. I think that I was really fortunate. There's a woman that lives here in Raleigh who owns 5 or 6 different kinds of wheels, and she's a teacher. And so the very first time I messaged her and said, hey, I've been spinning on the drop spindle, I want to try a wheel. And she said, all right, come meet me. And she brought a bunch of her wheels. So I got to try them all, which was great, because I had intended to buy a ladybug, I think, or a sidekick. And I struggled on that wheel for whatever reason. And I know people love their shacked wheels, and I wanted to, and it's an amazing company, but for some reason, I just really struggled with spinning on that. I ended up buying a Lendrum, but I rented a Lendrum from her for a month. I rented a Louette from her for a month, and I rented an Ashford Joy from her for a month. And then I decided to buy the Lendrum. So I mean, anybody who's venturing down that path, I would encourage you to try as many wheels as you can before making a purchase, because it does make a really big difference.
Yeah, and it's not a small purchase. Like if you purchased a set of knitting
Right.
needles and you're like, well, okay, I didn't enjoy those, but that's okay. I'll just buy another set,
Yeah,
and it's not as much of an investment as a wheel
exactly.
is. Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. For sure. Do you want to talk a bit about a favorite project you've had, or some sort of, I mean, I know I just heard on your podcast that you finished your Kiviat shawl. I wish
I
that I
have
could
it
feel
right here
that.
with, well, so, and I bought it, you must know I bought it in Alberta, in
Yeah.
2022 when we went up to Alberta. So yeah, it's hard to say what your favorite is, because they're like our children, right? Like we love them all for
Hmm.
various
Hmm.
reasons, but this is, I bought 2 balls of 100% Kiviat, and it was a major splurge, but I had saved some birthday money because I knew we were going on this trip, and I knew that if I was ever going to buy Kiviat, what a great reason to do it. And it's got beads on it, and it's just yeah, I'm showing you the right side. I don't knit a lot of lace because I tend to like easier peasy stuff that I just don't have to think a lot about. And um, this was just really fun to make. And I think when you do knit lace and you kind of get into a groove with it, it's very satisfying. And but it just feels so nice. So right now, yes, this is my favorite
Hmm.
project that I've made right now.
Yeah, it's
So
beautiful. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I've been debating because I don't know where I'm going to wear it, and I'm a little bit scared to submit it to any of the fiber arts competitions just because it was so expensive, and I'd hate for something to happen to it. So I don't know if I'll be doing that, but I know
Yeah.
I will figure out somewhere to wear it. So,
Pam, you just
but
wear it
yes,
wherever you want to.
I
That's what I
know
was gonna
that's what I
say. I'm
should
like,
do. Like I'm going to the
all day,
grocery
every day.
store.
Go,
Yeah.
I'm
that's
going to the
right.
gas station. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but I think it's really pretty, and I'm very happy with it. So
Yes, it is beautiful. Yeah.
thank you.
What about you, Greg? Do you have a favorite project, or clearly
Yeah,
you like to
usually.
knit socks? So
Right. Yeah, usually my favorite project is whatever I'm working on at the time. So
Mhm.
because I just whatever I'm working on. Um, did think, and like you mentioned socks. I'm on a sock kick right now, and I've gone hot and cold with it. Sometimes I'll be on a sock kick, and then I won't knit a sock for months, but then I'll pick it back up. Uh, so socks are a favorite kind of project. Another favorite kind of project for me is color work, because I really do enjoy doing color work, but I don't do a lot of it. So like I'll whip out a color work hat or whatever, and I'll love it, but then I'll put it down for 6 or 8 months and not do another one again.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's that. And then like specific projects, I would say that like the very first thing I knitted, the preemie hat for my daughter, just because I mean it's a crappy project, but it's like just like
Oh,
it got me knitting.
yeah.
And then also the first hats that I did as the design for my first design. So those would be favorites.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Awesome. And tell me about some of your most challenging projects.
I brought one.
It's
Okay.
good,
So
good.
I mentioned I don't make lace that often. This is from Hunter Hammerson published these books a number of years ago for these shawls called Curls,
Hmm.
and they're really cool. I do not wear this a ton because I wished I had had another skein to make this bigger. But this is called Philemont. It's on the cover of her book, and it's lace on both sides. And so like I mentioned with the other shawl, which I didn't mention that as Ruby Hill Blackjack, but this one is Hunter Hammerson Philemont. And when I got to a point where I had not memorized, but like where I knew what I was doing because it's lace on both sides. That felt really good, but I was also kind of ready to be done with it at this point. But I just think that it's a really beautiful lace pattern.
Hmm.
So,
Is there
um,
stellina in that yarn?
there is
Oh, okay.
stellina in it.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
sparkle's
Yeah, you can
coming
kind of
through.
see it. Yeah. And I don't think the color is showing up. It's just a really pretty kind of slate blue color. So this is good for like just around the neck, but you can see it's not that huge. So it's not a like a warmth kind of thing, but it is
Hmm.
the lace is really pretty. And
Hmm.
it was challenging because of the lace being worked on both sides. There's no, no rest rows.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So yes.
Awesome. What about you,
I will
Greg?
I will tend to invent a challenge with just about anything I'm doing. I'll find something that'll be challenging. Like even right now I'm knitting vanilla, like just stockinette socks, but I didn't look at my yarn correctly and I ran out of yarn. Like I have a green toe that I had to switch because I ran out of the other green and the heel gets to be red instead. Uh, so
You're just making
so
it
I'll do
work.
something. Yeah, yeah, something like that. When I first started knitting, I had no concept of what was supposed to be considered difficult, and which I think is great. Like if you don't know, oh, such and such is supposed to be hard, you then you don't try to do it. And so early on when I was knitting, since I was knitting for a baby, I was knitting stuffies, on DPNs in the round with a small number of stitches, all sorts of things that people say, "Oh my gosh, that's so fiddly." It's a little fiddly, but or I can never do it, but whatever. And I didn't know better, but it's what I wanted to make. So that's what I would do. Um, Also, one of the early sweaters I did for Blueberry was uh, I had no concept of like how fiber content worked. And I had very little concept on how swatching worked. So I had a book of patterns. This might even before knew Ravelry existed. So I had a book that I got from the craft store, and I had sweater patterns in it. And I found one that I liked. I didn't have the yarn that they called for, but I got some other yarn that was purple and pretty and alpaca. And so it was very stretchy and it was uh and then I don't know what I did for gauge, but I knitted it based on the instructions based on the size I thought I needed. And I ended up with something that was it took her like she was less than a year old when I knit it, and she was 4 or 5 before she was big enough to wear it,
Yeah.
but it was lots of challenges there. That was
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, I have a similar kind of project that I made for my daughter. And it had like one of those envelope opening, not envelope, but like the placket
Hmm.
little buttons
Yeah.
on the thing. And I never sewed the buttons on or finished it. So like I didn't weave in any of the ends. And it was like this cotton chainette yarn. I can't even remember what I think it had cashmere in it too. And I did she was probably a toddler at the time that I made it. Anyway, so I finally, now that I know more, I finished it off and she wore it as like a little shirt because she's like this skinny mini little thing, right? So she wore it as a shirt. And then the other day she says to me, she's like, I think it's too small for me. I'm like, it was too small for you like 10 years ago.
It is kind of fun how you can knit like longer garments for little girls and they can wear it like a dress and then it becomes a
Hmm.
shirt, which is kind
Hmm.
of fun.
I did
Yeah,
that with
yeah,
the
for sure.
Milo pattern. The first time I
Yeah.
did the Milo pattern, it was perfect for that because I knitted it. It was long. She was able to wear it for about 3 years, and it was like when she was like from a baby to like from a toddler to like a child,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and it was great. And I remember looking at some of the early pictures of her wearing it, and it went down like almost as a dress, but like almost down to her knees, not quite down to her knee. And then the last time she wore it, it was like a shirt.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all, I mean, yeah, and my son, so when they each turned 11, I knit them the Mrs. Weasley sweater from the Harry Potter book. with their initial on the front and stuff. And my son is just about to turn 14, and he tried the sweater on the other day, and he's like, "It's fine. It's just short cuffs because he can fit it this way, right?" And it's kind of a little
Hmm.
bit cropped. Like it definitely looks small, but he's like, "It's fine. I could still wear it. I could still wear it."
That's so
But for
sweet.
a Weasley sweater, a little small and cropped is kind of on brand. So
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
true.
That's true. That
That's
is
true.
true.
Our friend Marta Schmarta designed that. She's one of our
Yes.
podcast moderators, so she'll
Yeah.
be excited to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. And my she's 12, so hers still fits her. I knit hers a little bigger. Again, as gain more knowledge, you kind of
you
be like,
learn.
oh, okay. She can roll up the sleeves for a couple years and still wear it, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, awesome. Awesome. So next question, do you have a stash and how do you store your stash?
No.
Do I have a stash? Yes. Greg does too. Don't believe his lies. Um, I store mine in a variety of places. There's a bed behind me. This is my home office, but it also doubles
Mhm.
as like an extra bedroom. And I've got two bins under the bed there that have yarn. And then there's a closet over here that I have, there's a closet. I have a lot of yarn in there that I don't have in my Ravelry because it's mostly for charity knitting. So
Mhm.
I've never entered it into my Ravelry. Like some of it, I just acquired and yarn that would be worth making charity hats and things like that. And then we have another room where I've got a bunch of those like IKEA units and the cubes, and I have
Mhm.
a lot of yarn in those. And then I also have a wine rack. I don't drink wine, but it's a floor standing wine rack. And I started storing skeins of yarn in it. Like I just stick them in the
Mhm.
little holes, and I think it's a way better use for a wine rack.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
most of that yarn that I have that's out there is more inspirational, like it's hand dyed or it's some kind of slightly luxury, it's things that I want to like look at and pet. So
Yeah. Yeah, we
yes.
just got new bookcases upstairs for my husband to display his book collection. He collects used books, and I said, so this top right hand corner here is all Fireweed Fiber Co. from her monthly clubs that she does, and it is all beautiful, and I have no idea what to do with any of it. And I was like, I think I'm just going to take one of your shelves and put my yarn on
Yeah.
display.
I've been trying to not buy yarn, which I mean, trying is being the operative word because it just happens. But I have been trying really hard to use my yarn. And like, if I want to make a top, what do I have that I could use for this top? And then finding something complementary to go with it so that
Hmm.
I am trying to work through my stash. But then, of course, like my daughter loves Taylor Swift. She's 22 and has basically grown up with Taylor Swift being her soundtrack. And Mustache Yarns just had a new Eras Tour
Hmm.
colorway, and I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I have to buy that. So I got one so I could make socks for her, and then I bought a second one so I could make socks for me.
Nice.
So yeah. So, acquisition happens, but I've
Hmm.
been pretty good about not buying too much without having a plan for it.
Yeah. What about you,
Purchasing and
Greg?
collecting yarn and knitting things with yarn are two entirely separate but valid hobbies. It's fine.
And
This is
I tell
true.
my husband the same thing because he collects books, but I'm the reader in the family. He reads a lot for work because he's a
Sure.
professor. So he reads a lot of that kind of book. So his idea of relaxing at the end of the evening is not more reading, but for me, it's great.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So he collects them, I read them.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you,
Well, I
Greg?
also
How do you store your stash?
I also
Everywhere.
have a little stash. Yes, I actually literally yes. So I do have a couple of like Rubbermaid bins in the bedroom that I have everything that are in those narrowed down to one bin now. I've got a couple bins. One of them has like a lot of like cows and scarves and things that I've knitted, but then the other has the raw materials for it. It's mostly sock yarn, fingering weight yarn that I because that's what I do when I'm out and about. I pick up I don't necessarily have a plan for it. I pick up a sock yarn and I figure I'll do something. I'll either make socks, I'll do a shawl or a cowl or something. I really don't knit garments. Now that Blueberry is older and bigger, it was great knitting things when she was, like 1 and 2 and small. And I don't knit big people stuff. Um, Not yet anyway. So I don't have like sweater quantities of a single, kind of yarn stored up anywhere as well. But then in addition to the like Rubbermaid upstairs, I've got a couple of pockets of a bag here or a bag there that is basically all the yarn I bought at such and such a fiber festival. So
Hmm.
I was like, oh, this is my SAF bag. This is my Carolina Fiber Fest bag. And I've got that from the past several years. And I actually keep those a little more visible to me so that I can, when I'm finished with a project or whatever, trying to think what I want to do next, I can be reminded, you have this stuff you bought last year, do something with it, and
Hmm.
and things
Hmm.
like that. And so I've got a bag of that near my work desk. I work from home, near my work desk, and I've got another couple of bags other places around the house just so that they're mostly out of the way, but also visibly reminding me that I don't need to get more yarn. But like, so like the Carolina Fiber Fest is next weekend. I'm going, and I'm sure I have no shopping list for it. I do not need anything. I will come home with more than one skein of yarn for myself. I will find stuff. I'm a sucker for show specific colorways, souvenir type stuff. I'll almost always get a fingering weight of a show specific colorway from at least one vendor, at least
Hmm.
one vendor. and
And it's hard
and
when you have favorite vendors because
Hmm.
we know a lot of the vendors that are going to be there.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do have a
Yes.
shopping list. So,
Well, that's good. That's good. It's
but
good
Well,
to have a
yeah,
plan.
but you
yes,
also have more planned stuff than I do. I am by the seat of
I
my
think
pants almost all the time.
generally speaking, yes, I am the planner and you are not.
I just
So,
yes, yeah,
but we also
and
get to
not
buy,
just not just for like planning knitting projects, but
oh
like
yeah,
in general.
in
Yeah,
life.
in
Okay,
Yes,
life.
okay,
yes, yes.
good.
Right.
We also get to buy prizes for the podcast though. So that's
Ooh.
always fun because then we're spending like money that's allocated to the podcast. So it's kind
Mhm.
of like not spending our own yarn budgets, but we still get to buy
Hmm.
yarn and support the
Hmm.
vendors. And so that's going to be fun.
Mhm.
Awesome. That's super fun.
Yes.
Cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about color. Do you have like a favorite color, and do you work with that color often? And then the kind of follow up is, how do you decide what color to use in a project? So answer any or all of those questions.
My favorite color is green, but I don't always knit with green. And I
Hmm.
mean, like the blackjack shawl that I just made was a green, but I just happened to pick that. I do not tend to work with warm colors. I tend to work more with cool, like greens, brown, or I'm sorry, green, blue, purples, pink, like dark pinks and reds. I do like neutrals like brown, and I have made things. I have one shawl that I've made that I love called the Grow Shawl. It's GRO by Fiber Tales, and I made that with a brown, and it her on her pattern, the one that she made was with a brown, and I think it just kind of like just looked so squishy and warm, and that I wanted a brown one also. But it tends to be more of like a darker, cooler brown.
Hmm.
So I don't know how I pick colors. I mean, if I like it, I like it, and I'll use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I have a lot of rhyme or reason to that, as opposed to the other kind of planning. So
Right. Right. Yeah. Awesome. What about you, Greg?
Yeah, so I would say my favorite color is probably red, and I do knit with a lot of red. I find, um, so yeah, uh, but then like, how do I pick colors? I usually when I'm purchasing yarn and I'm with somebody, doesn't matter who it is, I usually get them to help me pick colors because I am Look at Pam. You can say it out loud, Pam.
He needs the help.
Yeah, I'm not good with
You need
colors.
direction.
He
Yes,
needs
exactly.
direction. Well, like he even
Like,
texted me like 2 weeks ago, was it a week or two ago? And
yeah,
he was getting ready to start something and he sent me 2 skeins and said, do these work for color work? And I was like, well, what kind of color work are you trying to do? Because I could see them being used together, but he was wanting to do letters. Like it was going to be a single stitch and he was going to write
right.
a word in the thing. And I was like, that is not going to work. You need to pick something else because there were similarities in the two to where that the words were going to completely get
It would
lost.
blurred.
They were going to
Right.
blend.
Yeah, or you made something recently and you called it red and white and it was pink and gray. It was like you were, I can't remember. You were just like not even in the right ballpark with color names. So
But red and pink are pretty much the same, and white and gray are pretty much the same.
but
So
they're not. You can think that if you want to, but the
look,
rest of the world might disagree with you.
look, the green. I've just got green yarn for the toe. It's the same.
No, it's not. It's okay, Greg.
Right.
Bless
So
your heart.
yes. My wife is really good with color, so I love it when I'm with her and let her pick out the colors for things and whatnot. Amanda at the local yarn shop that I go to, she also knows that I need help with the colors. So whenever she knows I'm coming down, she knows that she's going to be helping decide the colors and everything. But it does kind of go back to what I mentioned before with how the thing that really drew me to knitting was the structure of the knits, the architecture behind it, the math and the geometry, the color and the art on it. It's like secondary to me, and it always has been for when I've been doing it. So I do appreciate beautiful color, and I do appreciate the yarn dyers who make great colors and everything like that. And I also appreciate people who help me find the good ones to use for myself.
Awesome.
Know thyself.
Awesome. Yeah. So you mentioned you have a local yarn store. Do you want to give them a quick plug?
Absolutely. Gate City Yarns on Elm Street in downtown Greensboro is my local. And when I used to work in the office before everyone started working from home, it was literally 3 blocks away from my office building. So at lunchtime, several times a week, I would walk on down, spend my lunch break at the shop talking, with Amanda, the owner, and the other customers who came in. Several people would come in and spend their lunchtime knitting and chatting and everything too. So it was a nice little community hub.
Amazing.
That is definitely one of the things I do miss about working downtown, because I just don't get out to the shop as often as I used to.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Pam? Do you have one close to you?
Yeah, we have a new one just opened, and a friend of mine is the owner, which is really nice. But his name is Glenn Lowry, and it's Oak City Fibers. It's in North Raleigh. There's another one that's nearby called Great Yarns. The owner's Pam Hartman. That's a great one. And then a new one opened up in Wake Forest, which is a little bit further for me, but that one's called the Naughty Sheep, and it's Knotty. Naughty Sheep.
Fun.
Yeah. So, but we've got a couple others, but I mentioned not trying not to buy more yarn, and I mean it happens, but usually I'll go to one of those.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I tend to try to let like local festivals and the like be my yarn shop. I do most of my yarn purchasing at the fiber festivals that I go to, which are just a couple here, but they're like spaced out a few months apart, so kind of serve my needs. And I will end up buying things at a yarn shop if I like specifically need something right now.
Right. Cool. And then do you guys knit in public often, like when you're out places, restaurants, whatever?
I do. My kids are older now. Like my daughter's 22, my son's 18, so I don't have to schlep kids anywhere. But when my son has done Taekwondo for years, so I was always knitting in the Taekwondo studio when we took him, or doctor's appointments or whatever. But I do knit in public, but I don't go out a ton. I mean, obviously I do, but it's just selective. But I always have something in my car. I make these crocheted single stitch. It's thermal stitch. single crochet thermal stitch pot holders, and I always have one in my car because like if I go to Costco to get gas and I'm sitting in the gas line, I'll work
Hmm.
on it. So, but I do knit in public, and I'm not very discriminate about it. I'll just do it. But I always have something that's easy in my purse, like a sock or the
Hmm.
pot holder or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I am at the age where I am schlepping kids around everywhere. So I, I always have my,
Opportunities.
yeah, my go-to currently is a muscle burrow hat. So,
Oh yeah. I haven't made one of those. Hats are another good one. Like when we go to the movies, I usually cast on a hat because it's harder for me to knit socks in the dark. I feel like it's too fine for me to feel easily with my fingers. So I usually, before we go to a movie, I will start a hat in advance
mhm,
and work on that in the movies.
perfect.
Strategic. Yes.
What
Yeah,
about you,
socks are
Greg?
my go-to. Socks are my
Hmm.
go-to for public knitting because they're so small and easy to carry, either in a little bag or whatever. And yeah, and I absolutely don't care who sees me knitting in public. I even a while back I started using places you can knit hashtag on Instagram to
Hmm.
like document a lot of the places I knit in public, and they end up being places like places you can knit are outside the dance studio while my daughter is in dance class for 2 hours,
Hmm.
and so I'll be just sitting there with a sock or whatever. So that was fun. I've gone to at my daughter's school, been to some like parent activities there where and I would have my knitting, and one of the other parents saw me knitting and came and started talking to me about it, and we ended up starting a craft a knitting and crochet, like a handwork craft club every other week at school in the morning after drop off for the kids. So it's kind of funny that it's not just, knitting in public and not caring if people see me, but then people see me and say, "Hey, let's start something
Yeah,
new." So,
yeah,
so
that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, yeah, I everyone knows at my kids' school, I'm on the parent advisory council, and everybody
mhm.
knows that I knit through meetings,
You're the
and
knitter.
yeah, exactly. They know who I am
Yeah.
because of
I
it,
have that
for sure.
reputation too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Me too.
We
yeah,
just
for
went to an
sure.
admitted students day at a university, and so we
Hmm.
were sitting in seminars all day, and I got a lot of sock done while I was
Hmm.
sitting there. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I know we talked a bit about at the beginning about other crafts and hobbies, but do you have any other ones you want to talk about?
The only other thing for me is just baking, cooking. I cook most of our meals. We don't eat out a ton, and I'm a good cook. So I think eating out is very selective for me because I don't want to go somewhere and pay for a meal that I could have made better myself.
Right.
And so, so I do enjoy that. A lot of times I free range cook, like I don't have a recipe. I just know things that are good together and I make it happen. And I usually have a very well stocked pantry and freezer and fridge, and so I think that's the only other thing. But I mean, knitting definitely wins. I would much rather knit than cook. So, but I still gotta do it because the people in
Yeah.
this house want to eat. So
Hmm.
Right.
yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hear
knitting
teenage boys
is
eat a lot.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I go to
you can
Costco every other
confirm.
week. Yeah, I can confirm. I go to Costco every other week. And so my son is graduating and he'll be going to college in August. And I'm already like, wow, I am not going to have to buy 3 gallons of milk at a time or 5 dozen eggs at
Hmm.
a time. So yeah,
Hmm.
it'll be
Hmm.
interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
knitting is definitely my primary, not my day job hobby. And yeah, I mean it's portable. I'm able to do it pretty much anywhere. And I go in fits and spurts with reading. So right now I'm on a reading kick. I've been doing a lot of pleasure reading, which is nice. And then also within the past year or so, I've re been reintroduced to tabletop role playing gaming. And that was through one of the other things I do online with Crits and Knits, where I was invited to be part of this group where they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, but all of the characters are also retired like elderly knitters as well. So it's been a lot of fun, and that's been starting to carry over besides that game, but other gaming type of stuff. My daughter went to D&D camp last year, and so she was really excited about Dungeons and Dragons and stuff now too. So that
Awesome.
would probably be my other one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never think about saying knitting or reading, but I read every
you
day.
do. You read a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read a lot. I
Do you have a specific genre you like?
think I probably like fantasy, like I like a touch of magic in my
Hmm.
books, but
Hmm.
it's definitely not, I definitely am all over the board with the kinds of books that I read. And um, I read on my Kindle. Well, I read on my iPad in the Kindle app. And it's so funny because sometimes it'll say, you can do better on your streak. And I'm like, my streak is like 700 weeks in a row or, 900 days in a row. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. They're crazy,
You can
but
do better, Pam.
I do it every day. I don't know how to do better. So, but I don't read fast enough to check out library books
Mm,
because a lot of times they're due in 2 weeks, and if somebody else is waiting for them, you can't renew. So
Mhm.
I tend to buy books when they're on sale, and I get a newsletter that always lists out books that are like on sale for $3 or $2. And that tends to dictate a lot of what I'm reading too, because I'll be like, oh,
mhm.
that looks like a great book, and I'll buy it. And at some point I'll get to it and I'll read it. So
Yeah,
I listen to
awesome.
books too, but not as much.
Okay. What about you,
Yeah.
Greg? What kind of books do you read? Or are you currently
Um,
reading?
currently enjoying sci-fi and fantasy sorts of stuff. So I'm reading a series of Dungeons and Dragons related books, but then I'm also rereading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, that
Hmm.
the whole
Hmm.
series, the 5 book trilogy. That's not how math works, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Series?
and yeah, exactly. And that's fun. So I like humor and sci-fi type of stuff. I'm
Awesome.
digging that. I like fiction, like the to-do list I make all the time is total fiction. So
Oh dear. Yeah, my son, who's almost 14, just read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, just the first
mhm.
book. But yeah,
Right.
he's like,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm not sure I understood most of it. And I'm like, you're not
You don't
supposed
have to.
to.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
beauty of it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that
he's
that's
used
why I
to
picked it
reading
back.
like Percy Jackson, where there's a
Right.
clear beginning, middle, and end, and there's a lesson to the book, right? This is just a
Those are
book.
great books too, though. When my
Yeah.
kids were
Oh yeah.
younger, and they were reading all that, I read all those books. And have you read The Green Ember?
No, I haven't. I haven't heard of that
Oh,
one.
it's such a good book.
Okay,
It's more for your kids, but it's such a
that's okay.
fantastic book. There's a series. You should check it out, The Green
Okay,
Ember.
okay.
Yeah,
I will definitely look at that one.
Blueberry's reading the Percy Jackson series now and
Hmm.
she's devouring it. She's like reading a
Yeah.
book every 2 days. She's
Hmm.
going through a book and absolutely loving that. And so that's part of why I picked up Hitchhikers again, because I was thinking, when did I first read it? I was in middle school. I was about her age. Is it appropriate? I think so, but let me reread it again to make sure. I'm
Yeah.
gonna pop it on her Kindle when I get a chance, and she can, or when she's done with the Percy Jackson stuff she's reading now, or whatever.
Hmm.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. I'm currently, well, I'm listening to the audiobooks for Red Rising, and which I think is my son is coming up on being mature enough to handle the some of the intensity in those books.
Mhm.
But yeah, my husband and I are both listening to them individually, but we have them on Audible. Um, and yeah, that's an enjoyable series as well. But again, it's definitely more intense and a bit more like I would say like later teens, I think,
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
more appropriate. What was the other series? Oh, The Unwanteds. My son loves that series.
I
It's
feel like my son read
uh
those.
yeah, I think Blueberry would enjoy those if she enjoys Percy Jackson. And there's the Unwanted
Look
series,
into
and then
that.
there's the Unwanted Quests as well, which is kind of a continuation in the same way that the Percy Jackson one has the 5 books that are in the series, and then there's the after kind of books as
Hmm.
well. So yeah, yeah, awesome. Um, what inspired you guys to start your podcast? I guess that's kind of a two-part story. Greg, if you want to
That's a
start.
that's a
Uh,
Greg for the origin story.
right. So, oh man, I really should have looked up when we actually started the podcast,
I can look
but
while
I
you're
had,
talking
okay, that's fine. That'd
because
be
I haven't.
great because I had not been knitting for many years. Um, so my daughter was born in 12, and I probably started the podcast in 14 or 15, maybe. She was 2 or 3. And
It's
I'd been knitting
2015,
in 15.
October.
Okay.
Yeah, October
Yeah.
2015.
That tracks. And so I'd been knitting a lot and posting pictures of my knitting on Facebook and things like that and all of that. And then one of my friends, his name's Joey, was seeing that on Facebook as well, and he decided that he was going to do it as well. And he taught himself how to crochet and showed me a picture of a little crochet amigurumi that he had done. He says, "Hey, look, I've been seeing all of what you've been doing. I want to do it too." I said, "That's great. I don't know how to crochet though. That's crochet. I'm doing the knitting." And he's like, "Oh, really?" And so then a little bit later, he came back. He showed me something that he had knitted, and he said, "Okay, fine. I learned how to knit." And we were just talking, and at one point, he suggested that he said we should start a podcast where we talk about knitting because I had been listening to a lot of knitting podcasts at that point, and I introduced Joey to a couple of them, and he enjoyed listening to those as well. And I said, "This is awesome because I've always thought that I would like to do a knitting podcast." Years ago, I had done a music-based podcast for a little while, and I enjoyed doing that. I said, "But I got a 2.5, a 3-year-old. I got a day job. I don't have the time to do all of the stuff about it." And he said that he could do the editing and a lot of the production on it. So okay, so we'll do it. We'll make it happen, and we did. So a few months after that conversation, we ended up putting out our first episode. And if you go back and listen to some of those first episodes, it's horrible. They're horrible. I mean the production quality. We have definitely improved production quality and things like that over the years, and but then the content, it's like, oh, listen to those boys talk about knitting. They're so cute. It's like,
That's pretty much how I thought because I started listening when y'all first came out with your first
right,
episode, and it was just like, they're so cute. Listen to
right.
them. Like,
I had
because you
been
were
writing
both
a
baby knitters,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been writing a blog about knitting, the Knitting Daddy blog, for a little while prior to that. And part of it was like I would like give updates on podcasts I was listening to and things like that. So I kind of had a name on Ravelry and in the blog universe as what I was doing and everything. But again, so this happened in 2015. I started knitting in 2012. I'd only been knitting for 3 years, and I was the experienced knitter on that on that podcast, and it was hilarious. But people tuned in, people liked it, and we did it for a while. And like Pam mentioned, we got about 40 episodes, and it was very difficult for us to consistently find time to record together. So our episodes towards the end of those first several dozen run, it became very sporadic and whatnot. And then Joey's interest moved away from knitting as well, so he didn't have as much knitting content to talk about, and it and then he didn't have time either, so he stepped away, and I kept doing it for a couple of episodes because I wanted to keep doing it, and everything was a lot of fun. We had a bit of a community that we had built, and so I did, but that wasn't great either. So now I'll turn it over to Pam for the next part of the story.
Well, so when y'all announced that Joey was going to step aside from the podcast, I was not surprised because
Yeah,
his content had been like dwindling consistently. And I I reached out to Greg and said, "Hey, we kind of knew each other, not really well, but we'd met and talked, and
I
we
had
our
interviewed you.
you
I'd
had
interviewed you
interviewed
for the
me,
podcast,
yeah, and our because we live about an hour and a half from each other, like we had some overlap in our knitting
our
circle.
circles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I reached out to Greg and said, "Hey, I don't know what your plans are. I think hosting a podcast would be a lot of fun, but I would not want to do it by myself. So if you want to talk, let me know. And Greg suggested that we do a couple of like guest episodes with me and to kind of see how our chemistry was and to see how it went. And I don't think it took you long to be like, we're doing this. Like,
Yeah, well, but from the very beginning, I was like, I hope it works because it is hard to do. I mean, it's hard enough to do a podcast in general, or whatever, but like to do it a solo one is very difficult. Just talking to your audience. But what Joey and I were doing, and of course what Pam and I do, we just talk with each other and the audience, and it's a lot easier, I think, to have a conversation. I really respect the folks who do solo podcasts
yeah.
and do them well. And a lot of the podcasts I listen to are solo podcasts. I I did a couple episodes by myself. It was hard and it was not good. And so I was hoping, when Pam reached out, that it would work out with us. But at the same time, I wanted to give us both an out in case the chemistry wasn't right or it just didn't work or whatever. Either of us would be able to say, yeah, okay, well, we did 2 or 3 guest spots and it's not working or whatever. But like, right away, I was like, okay, this is fine for me. I hope Pam is loving it.
Yeah.
And I guess
yeah,
she
and it was fun. So, and speaking, I guess so. I mean, it's been 5 years. But speaking of Hitchhiker's Guide for the Galaxy, my first official episode as co-host was 42.
42.
So
Oh, there you go.
perfect.
There you
Yes.
go. Awesome. Yeah, I will say, like, myself talking into my phone once a week sometimes feels a little awkward. And then I try to convince my 12-year-old daughter to come on with me sometimes, and she does. She enjoys it. But and then for the 50th episode, I had my husband come on, but it was very difficult because then we were both facing the camera, but then we were talking to each other, but into the camera. It was like a whole thing. Anyway, if you check out the 50th episode, it's quite hilarious. I'm doing another one for the 100th episode. I have taught him how to knit, but he hasn't done it in a couple years, and he just knit like a little swatch kind of thing. So he doesn't know much knitting terminology. So if you guys think of any questions that you want to ask a non-knitter about knitting, you send them in.
I had the best idea the other day. Greg, I meant to send you a text and I never did. But I was thinking, how fun would it be to have a game show with spouses of knitters to be like, what is this? Like, get them to name the object, like a quiz show, like show them stitch markers, tape measures, like name this object and see how far they get.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I've been knitting for like 25 years and
terminology, right?
Yeah.
Like, he knows some of the things because I've talked about like frogging or things like that is not really, you wouldn't think it is what it is, but some terminology that maybe he wouldn't know.
Yeah. Or like, when should you not interrupt a knitter? Like when they're counting,
when they start counting louder.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, even my kids know that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about what you and I are doing is with the conversation and then the fact that it's audio. So I love the audio podcast so that we don't have to like make the video work as well, because that's just an extra level of production that I haven't even considered. How to make work. The audio is enough. So yeah, it's good. And I like at one point. Well, when Blueberry was born, I was working in Cary, which is close to Raleigh. So I was driving to and from work about an hour and 15 minutes every day. And so I listened to a lot of podcasts, and they were audio because I wasn't going to be watching YouTube while I'm driving.
Good.
I'm a smart guy there.
It's reassuring.
So yeah, so that's where my love for the podcast has always tended towards audio, because I'm often doing it when I'm doing something else. I'm often enjoying the podcast while I'm doing something else, where watching it wouldn't work out so well.
Yeah. I tend to do audio also because I tend to listen while I'm driving or walking the dog or cooking dinner, or it drives my husband insane because he'll start talking to me and I'll pause. What? And he's like, never mind.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I watch a bunch and listen to a bunch and but I work from home and I have many hours in the day where I can have something kind of on in the background and I'm kind of just working
Hmm.
away on a project. So I find the video podcasts are nice for that because it's not like a show that you have to like pay attention to every
Yeah.
detail, right? Like you can kind of listen to it and then glance over and be like, oh, that's really, cool looking, and then look back.
Right.
And then yeah, I listen to audiobooks or knitting podcasts as well, audio podcasts. So
Yeah, that is
awesome.
nice about the knitting, the video ones, because it can be, you can just listen, but then it's like, and then let me show you this project. Pam and I have to describe it, and really that
Mhm.
ends up being Pam has to describe it because
I
I'll
have to help
say,
you with colors.
you have to help me with colors.
Yeah, it is.
Awesome.
I work from home also, and I've started having podcasts, like video podcasts on in the
Mhm.
background while I'm doing stuff, which is, like you said, I mean, you can mostly listen and then glance over, which is nice.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome. All right, what are you currently working on? We've kind of you've flashed them a couple times. What do you know
Yeah.
what
Socks.
yarn that is? Socks.
It so this is yarn that is white and red, and then there's green yarn, and
Good
then
job.
more red yarn.
And more red. Perfect.
Why don't you
Got
help
it.
us
It's a
more?
different red. Yes, I got it at a fiber festival that I went to a few years ago. And I don't remember exactly um the dyer because they don't have a presence on Ravelry. So when I entered into my stash, I didn't make a note of who it was specifically. But it is a Christmassy yarn, and it came with the red and white as the main skein, and then 10-gram mini skein of green, which 10 grams is not enough to do two heels and two toes. Could be enough to do either two heels or two toes. So I had to supplement it with additional green and then red, and then
Mhm.
the the other one that I did, it came out great.
Oh,
So
awesome.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's very cool.
Yeah,
Very
so that's what
Now
I'm
nice.
you're
working
going to
on.
know which is your left and your right because one's
That's
red and
right.
That's
yellow.
right. I'll
You
have
won't
to,
get
Or it doesn't matter.
confused.
right. Yes. Or as I've pointed out to people who have seen this, and I can kind of tell they're a little uncomfortable with the non-complete matchiness of it. I'll say, but I'll tell you what, when you see me wearing them, you won't even know because I'll have shoes on as well.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, except for
Exactly.
my family around the house when I'm just walking around on my sock feet. If I'm out in public, you'll see them with the shoes
In your
on them, and you
shoes.
won't be able to see the
Yeah.
heels or toes. You'll only see the wild red and white and the one by one ribbing at the top.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yes. I am working on a pair of socks for my husband. It's Patton's Croy. I think it's called tourmaline stripes. So it's kind of got it's dark, but it's kind of got some
Mhm.
purple and a little bit of teal. And I usually do the fish lips kiss heel and just a basic sock pattern. I like to add broken rib, broken because I'm lazy and I don't want to purl every round. But I think it adds enough stretch. So,
Mhm.
and Greg, when we recorded last week, you remember I realized I had done the broken rib on the back of the foot, and I was like, well,
Yep.
forget it. He's just gonna have broken rib on the bottom of his foot. And I did fix it.
Oh,
So,
you did?
which I
Oh,
did,
yeah, you
yeah. I mean, it's
did.
kind of
Did
wonky,
you
but
did you
I
drop
had
down and fix it?
I dropped down. Yeah,
Nice.
um I have two 4-stitch columns of broken rib, and I started looking at a whole nother sock and the rest of the foot. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to keep doing all the extra broken rib if I don't have to. So I took the 30 minutes to drop down. And it's a little wonky right now because I had to
You wash
bring it
it.
back up, but when I wash it, it'll be
Yeah.
fine. So,
I'm going
Yeah.
to give
but
you
that
laser beams for that. Give you the devil's horn and laser
I didn't
beams
know you could
for
do that. Oh my gosh, you
Oh,
know
you
all
have
the
lots of
Apple
fancy
tricks.
ones.
It's because we're both on Apples. Like I
Yeah.
have a MacBook, Greg's on an Apple, and you can do like the hearts, you can do the thumbs up, you can
Mhm.
apparently that,
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, like a
He
peace
went,
sign. Anyway,
Oh,
I just
rainbow
oh,
balloons.
this is what Greg
I
does
Love
have
during
it.
the day while he's supposed to
well,
be working.
I have a Mac at I have a Mac at work for my day job too, so I
Mhm.
torture all of my coworkers with whatever.
Perfect.
That's
Perfect.
funny. I'm gonna show you
Awesome.
another winter project. Well, I
Yeah.
didn't bring this one in. I'm making a graduation gift blanket for my son for high school, and I love it. I'm really excited about that. But this is the V-back tee. No, it's not.
Mm.
It's the rocket tee. Titannus
There you go.
Lavalley.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the rocket tee, and I'm about to split out for the sleeves.
Mhm.
But her pattern has you do two colors and alternate every 8 rounds. But this yarn that I have has just got a long color repeat, so I'm not
Mhm.
alternating yarn. But I really like it. And I think it's a short sleeve top, but I think I'm gonna make it long sleeve because these are more neutrals. I think these are good like fall colors and winter
Mhm.
colors. So I have enough yarn. And I got this yarn at the Triangle Fiber Guild Christmas holiday party, and we did like a gift exchange, and I got 3 balls of this. So
Ooh.
yeah, so I decided to make the rocket tee because it's a really nice yarn, and I'm excited about how this is. And I'm getting ready to be in my favorite, which is just go around and around and around. So
Mhm.
but yeah, so that's fun. I can see more of these in my future too.
Mhm.
Yeah, that one's in my queue. I don't. Oh, hold on. Oh, oh, I have
Cute
this
runaway
super
yarn.
sparkle.
Oh, that's pretty. Is that
Oh.
hand spun?
No, this is
Oh, it's
from
really pretty.
Fireweed Fiber Co. It's not. There is pink in there too, but
Yeah.
it's got Lurex in it instead
Mm-hmm.
of Stellina, so
I
that's
like
why you
Lurex
get that
better.
like, yeah, it's like very sparkly. So,
Yes.
but it's very variegated. But I thought the Rocket Tea would be good without the striping and just
Yeah.
because I have
Yeah.
two cakes of it. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, you'll be perfect.
yeah. So I just
It's
ripped it
a
out. I
yeah,
was
it's a fun
doing a
pattern.
lace shawl with it, but it was not working.
Well, I'm excited about this little rocket tee. I'm trying to make more sweaters and more tops for myself. So
Mhm.
I'm excited about this one. And I've got another
Yeah.
one that I've already swatched for and yarn for I have a couple more sweater quantities of yarn. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have the ball band for that yarn? Do you know what it is, or is it just mystery
Yeah.
yarn?
No, I've got one. It is Queensland. It's Queensland Collection, Uluru
Cool.
Rainbow. And
Wow.
this color is Platypus Pub, which is like half the reason I like it. But I
Yeah.
mean, what's not to like about a platypus pub?
Yeah.
So, but it is a discontinued yarn. So,
No, okay.
but it's 49% cotton, 43% acrylic, and 8% polyamide. So,
Nice.
it's a nice weight. It's got a little bit of fuzz to it. So I think
Hmm.
it should make for a nice garment.
Yeah, and that cotton acrylic keeps it cool, but also doesn't lose its shape
Yep.
with acrylic in there because cotton can be very stiff and kind of draggy.
Well, I mentioned on our podcast, I swatched for this, and I like to treat my swatches like I'm going to treat my garment. So I went on Ravelry and looked up what were the care instructions for the yarn, and it said machine wash, machine dry. And I was like, okay, because I didn't have the label near me. So, and we were getting ready to put a load of laundry in. So I threw the swatch in a lingerie bag and threw it in the wash, and I got it out. And the yarn it had definitely shrunk and kind of floofed up a lot more. Like it just didn't seem right. So then I looked at the ball band, which says, don't machine wash, machine dry. And so I was super annoyed, and I reknit the exact same swatch, like not the same swatch, but I reknit another swatch on the same
Yeah,
needles and hand washed and laid it flat to dry, and it did much better. So
that's good.
I learned not to trust Ravelry yarn care instructions.
So you're
Go with the ball
saying
band.
that
Don't
not
trust
everything
everything
on
on the
the internet
internet.
is true.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
For sure.
It's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, I think that comes to the end of my questions. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about today?
I don't think so. Do you have good yarn shops where you are? You're in Vancouver? Is that right?
I'm not in Vancouver. I'm in outside of Kelowna. So
Okay.
I live in a town called Lake Country, which is outside of Kelowna. So, but
Okay.
yeah, so in Kelowna there are two. We have the Art of Yarn and Kelowna Needlecraft, and then in Vernon there's a yarn shop, and that one's actually my favorite to go to. It's like an old heritage house they've turned into a yarn store, and it's just
cool.
the best. So like each room, there's like the cotton room in one area, and then like all the like DK weight is in this room, and the fingering weights in this room, and it's very cool.
That's
So
nice.
yeah, that one's my favorite to go to. But they're all about half an hour away from me, so I
Okay.
don't go that often.
So far enough to present indiscriminate spending,
Yes, yeah,
but
exactly.
close enough to be within reach.
Yeah, exactly. We can go, and I have one. She's a small case knitter, small case K knitter, but I'm converting her to a capital K knitter.
Very
So every
nice.
couple months we have we'll go to the yarn store, go for coffee, and kind of do a bit of a day out thing. So it's fun.
Good.
That is fun.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your favorite thing about where you live?
Mm, well, so I grew up in Vancouver near the mountains, and so we're in the mountains here, but the fact that I live at like the top of a mountain is kind of my favorite thing. We have this amazing view of like the lake and the valley and everything. I think but Lake Country itself has 4 lakes in it, so
Wow.
there's lots to do. And then there's 2 ski hills within about 45 minutes either direction and stuff. So there's lots of winter sports, lots of summer sports, and yeah, it's
That's
good.
fantastic.
And because Lake Country itself is small enough, like my kids ride their bikes to school a lot.
Mm.
We know our neighbors. It has that kind of small town feel to it that drove us away from Vancouver,
Yeah,
basically.
it sounds a little bit magical.
Yeah, yeah. There are definite downsides to living on the side of a hill, and I
Yeah.
have to, we get out there and shovel the meters of snow and our driveways like this, So downsides, but
Yeah.
it is beautiful for sure, for sure. Awesome. Well, I thank you for taking the time today. I know it's been a long recording session, but this has been super fun, and I really appreciate you joining me.
Well, thank you for
Thank you.
having us.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you for having us. I enjoyed it. It was delightful.
good,
Absolutely.
excellent, awesome.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys around the internet.
All right. Well, thank you. And I was
Awesome.
going to watch more, but I got distracted by YouTube by
Well,
another
it
video of
happens.
The
Pedro
the
Pascal wearing a lie
algorithms.
detector. Yeah. They served me up Pedro Pascal wearing
Oh, well,
a lie detector, and I was like, well, how can I pass that up? I
you
mean,
can't pass that up.
it was pretty
Anything with Pedro
entertaining.
Pascal.
You had me at
Yes,
Pedro.
Yeah, exactly.
pretty much.
Took in the hearts and zoom. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hearts for Pedro.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Alrighty.